My niece stole thousands from my retirement account to throw herself a secret birthday party in my house. That was betrayal enough, but it wasn't the worst thing that happened that weekend. The next morning, she opened the fridge to grab leftover cake and screamed. Loud. Panicked. When I ran in, I saw what made her freeze. A photo taped to the inside of the fridge door. It was her, asleep in bed the night before. Taken from the foot of the bed. Whoever took it had been inside my house. And they weren't done. Retirement was supposed to feel like an exhale. One long, slow breath after a lifetime of clenching your jaw through morning alarms, rude supervisors, and $20 pay gaps no one could explain. For me, it didn't come with a beach view or early bird cruise packages. No, it came with an old recliner that creaked louder than my knees and a small house I'd spent years patching together with duct tape, leftover paint, and sheer stubbornness. I was proud of what I'd built. Not just the house, but the life. No loans hanging over me. No one else's name on my bills. Just me, my modest pension, and the small retirement fund I'd scraped together with the kind of discipline that most people wouldn't understand unless they'd lived paycheck to paycheck with a kid's birthday coming up and only one light bulb working in the kitchen. What happened next was rather unexpected. I will tell you everything. But first, if you enjoy stories like this, you want to be part of the 10% viewers who click on the like button. It makes us really happy. If you are yet to subscribe to our channel, kindly support us today by subscribing to this channel. This helps us to bring you more beautiful stories. It will be great to tell us where you are watching us from in the comment section. My niece, Kayla, moved in 3 months after I clocked out for good. Said she needed a place to land after college. Her lease ended. The job hunt wasn't going well, and the thought of moving back in with her mother, my sister, who lives 2 states away and treats Kayla like a distant memory, was too much to bear. I didn't hesitate. I'd watched her grow up, brought her chocolate milk and Band-Aids when she scraped her knees at age 6. She was blood. I told myself that's what family does. We make room. I didn't ask for rent. Just respect. All I wanted was for her to treat the house like a home. Not a playground. Not a hotel. A home. Which is why when I found out what she did, something in me cracked clean down the middle. It was the Monday after her birthday when the truth started crawling out from under the rug. I'd noticed little things the night before. The sticky floor in the kitchen, an empty wine bottle in the recycling bin that I hadn't touched, my good towels missing from the linen closet. Kayla was all sweet smiles and apologetic glances. Just a few friends, she said. Kept it chill. Nothing wild. But I'm not new to this world. I smelled the perfume of too many people in one space. I saw the beer ring left on the edge of my grandmother's side table, the one Kayla swore she never touched. I kept my mouth shut. Just watched. Waited. It wasn't until Tuesday that I found the receipt. I was checking my online banking, like I always did every few days, habit from years of scraping by, and saw the charge. Not 100. Not 500. $3,416, pulled from my separate savings account. The one I used only for emergencies and the little I'd saved for retirement. It was transferred to my checking account 2 days before Kayla's birthday. I clicked through, heart pounding harder with each detail. And there it was, a series of purchases all made within hours. Decorations, catering, DJ deposit, a custom cake, even a rented bounce house. A bounce house. For a 23-year-old's birthday. I walked into the kitchen where she was scrolling on her phone and held it out without a word. She barely looked up. Oh, yeah, I meant to talk to you about that. She said it like she'd borrowed a pair of socks. Like thousands of dollars were a minor oversight. I was going to replace it. I just needed a little help up front. I figured since you're retired now, you'd be okay floating it for a bit. I stared at her, blinking slow, as if trying to reset my own brain. That wasn't your money, Kayla. That's my retirement. That's what I worked 42 years for. She rolled her eyes. God, you act like I stole it. You did steal it, I said, my voice low and tight. You took it without asking. You lied. You threw a damn party with it. It wasn't lying. It was improvising. I had to walk away. Had to. Because if I'd stood there another second, I might have said something I couldn't take back. I went into my room, closed the door, and sat in the dark for almost an hour. My hands were trembling. Not with rage, not fully. with disappointment. The kind that sinks in your bones, heavier than anger, because it's tied to love. I let her in. I trusted her. I gave her a home, and she took the one thing I hadn't let anyone else touch. And somehow, she thought that was okay. But that wasn't the worst part. That came the next night. It was just after 10 p.m. when I heard her scream. I mean scream. The kind that cracks through walls and rattles windows, primal and terrified and urgent. I jumped from the couch and sprinted toward the kitchen, heart pounding, legs still sore from years on concrete floors. I found her by the fridge, back pressed against the wall, hand to her mouth. She was pointing inside. At first, I thought it was a bug, or maybe a dead mouse. But then I stepped closer and saw what she was pointing at. A photo, taped to the inside of the fridge door. It was glossy, black and white. No message, no handwriting. Just a picture of Kayla, asleep in her bed. Taken from the foot of the bed, the angle tilted slightly, like someone had crouched down to get it. She was lying on her side, eyes closed, hair splayed out across my guest pillow. I felt something cold crawl up my spine. I looked at her, still frozen in place. When was this taken? She shook her head. I don't know. How did that get there? Who did that? She was shaking now, and not the bratty, eye-roll kind. Real fear. Her eyes darted around like the walls themselves were watching. I took the photo down, turned it over. Nothing. Just glossy paper and proof that someone had been inside our home, inside her room, while she was asleep. And they hadn't stolen anything. Just watched. And waited. There are certain sounds that never leave you once you've heard them. A scream like the one Kayla let out that night. It burrows in and clings to the inside of your ribcage like it's trying to etch itself into your bones. Even after we'd taken the photo off the fridge, even after I'd double-checked every window, every lock, every door, I could still hear that scream echoing in the back of my head. It was the kind of scream that didn't come from confusion or embarrassment or even guilt. It came from fear. And whatever mask Kayla had been wearing since I confronted her about the money, it cracked completely the moment she saw that photo. She sat on the kitchen stool, legs bouncing, hands twitching in her lap, like she couldn't figure out what to do with them. The photo lay on the table between us, face down, as if turning it over could somehow erase the image it burned into both of our minds. Her, asleep, in my guest room, my room now, I suppose, since she'd made herself permanent, shot from the end of the bed. It was too close, too personal. Whoever took it wasn't just passing through. They had been in the room, watching her, near her, while we both slept under the same roof. I locked my door, she said quietly, barely audible. I always do. Were the windows open? No, she said quickly. They don't even open all the way. You nailed them shut after the raccoon thing, remember? I did. Some feral-looking creature had crawled up the trellis and gotten stuck in the attic vent 2 years ago. It scared the hell out of me, so I sealed every window tighter than a coffin lid. You sure the lock wasn't broken? She nodded again. It clicks. I always check. We sat in silence, the air thick with a kind of dread you don't put words to. Not right away. I stared at the photo again, thinking about how it ended up taped inside the fridge. That wasn't random. That was meant to be found. That was someone saying I was here. I still could be. And suddenly, the missing money, the party, the invasion, they all braided together into something that wasn't just careless. It was dangerous. And I'd opened the door to it. I stood up and went straight to the front door. Locked. Deadbolt still in place. I checked the back door. Same thing. Every window was sealed. Nothing looked touched. No fingerprints. No muddy footprints. Nothing. Just that photo. Evidence that someone had gotten in, snapped it, and taped it up. Or worse, that they'd never left at all. My stomach turned as I walked back toward the kitchen. You said only a few people came to the party, right? She nodded slowly, but there was something in her face that told me she was already bracing for what came next. I need names. She exhaled hard, like she'd been holding her breath since the scream. I mean, I invited like 5 or 6 people, just close friends, but it got shared a little. Someone posted about it in their story, and then a couple people brought plus ones. It got kind of big. How big? 30? Maybe 35. I stared at her like she'd grown another head. You had 30 people in this house. I didn't mean to, she snapped, the fear starting to morph into defensiveness. It just happened. I wasn't keeping count. Everyone was just drinking and dancing. Nobody was snooping around or anything. You don't know that. I would have noticed. You didn't even notice someone walked into your room and took a picture of you sleeping. That shut her up. And it shut me up, too. Because the truth was loud in both our faces. Whoever did this, they weren't random. They were close enough to her to know which room was hers. They were confident enough to walk through the house without being caught. And they were cruel enough to leave a message instead of a weapon. Later that night, after Kayla locked herself in the guest room and refused to come out, I sat down at the kitchen table with her phone and scrolled through her photos. I wasn't proud of it, but the situation didn't leave a lot of room for ethics. The gallery was cluttered with party pics, flashes of bodies, solo cups, blurred smiles, and filter-heavy selfies. The house looked different in those images, more alive, more chaotic. People spilled out of every room. Music equipment was plugged into the wall. Someone had strung lights along the ceiling fans. My house had been transformed into a nightclub without my knowledge. And then I saw him. In one of the later photos, time-stamped 12:41 a.m. Kayla stood near the living room doorway with two of her friends, laughing at something. And behind her, half obscured by shadows, was a man, standing completely still, not posing, not smiling, just watching. At first I thought maybe it was nothing, just someone mid-step, caught by the lens. But as I kept scrolling, I found him again. Same posture, different spot. This time, by the hallway to the guest rooms. And then again, 30 minutes later, closer. Always closer. 3 photos. 3 appearances. And in none of them was he acknowledged. No arms around him. No drinks in his hand. No interaction at all. It was like he wasn't there to party. He was there for her. I printed the images from my work laptop the next day, blew them up, side by side, and stared at them until my eyes watered. The man wasn't particularly tall. Shaved head, plain black hoodie, nothing that would draw attention. But the eyes, there was something dead behind them. Something cold. Like he was already imagining the next move. I showed them to Kayla. Her hand went to her mouth again, the same way it did in the kitchen. I don't know him, she whispered. You sure? She nodded, slower this time. I would have remembered him. Then she said something that made the air go still. I think he might have been at one of my old apartments. I stared at her. What do you mean? She hesitated. I don't know. There was this one time. I'd come home, and the window was cracked open. And I swore I heard someone walking down the hall, but when I called out, nobody answered. I figured it was just my imagination. I swallowed hard. Kayla, this isn't your imagination. She nodded, eyes wide. And that's when I realized. This wasn't a party guest who overstayed. This was someone who had been waiting long before the music started. There's a shift that happens in your own home when you start seeing it as a crime scene. Walls don't feel like protection anymore. They feel like thin sheets of denial, like anything could be hiding just behind them, waiting to be noticed. The familiar creaks in the floor stop being harmless. Every sound becomes evidence. You start second-guessing things you've lived with for years. How many coats are hanging on the rack? Whether that window was always open a crack, if the hallway light bulb used to flicker that way, or if it was something else. That's where I found myself the morning after we uncovered the man in those photos. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt borrowed, breached, and I had no idea how long that had been true. Kayla didn't sleep. I knew it without asking. Her light stayed on all night, seeping faintly under the guest room door. I could hear her pacing when I got up for water around 3 a.m., soft, tentative steps that never went more than a few feet. I didn't blame her. Truth be told, I didn't sleep either. I sat up in the living room recliner, blanket over my lap, my phone clutched like a weapon I'd never be able to use fast enough. I'd never felt so aware of my age, of how easily someone half my size, half my age, could have slipped in and done something I couldn't undo. I thought about how long he might have been watching, how long he might have waited for a night when music and strangers would give him the cover he needed. By sunrise, I had made a list. Every name Kayla remembered from the party. Every person tagged in photos. I went through social media, combed through captions, zoomed in on background figures. I looked for matching hoodies, shaved heads, That same flat, unreadable expression. I didn't find him. Not directly. But what I did find was worse. There were shots of my house, wide ones, taken from angles that meant the person wasn't just attending the party, they were documenting it. Photos from the backyard, the side of the house, even one from the street across. That wasn't someone making memories. That was someone cataloging. I stared at one of them for a long time. Taken just before sunset, a clear view of the upstairs windows, including the guest room. Kayla's curtains were open. The light was on, and if you looked close, you could see the shadow of her moving inside. I showed it to her over breakfast, what little she managed to eat. Do you recognize this? She squinted at it, then shook her head. I don't know who took it. That angle. It's not from the party. No one was even out there. Exactly, I said. We went outside together. I walked her across the street to where the photo had been taken. From that distance, you could see right into the house if the curtains were open and the light was on. I asked her again. Did you ever notice anyone parked out here before the party? Sitting in a car, maybe? She hesitated. There was a white truck a few times. I figured it was a neighbor. We don't have a white truck on this street. She looked at me, and I saw the realization settle into her chest like a stone. When we got back inside, I checked the spare key. Or rather, I checked where it used to be. There's a loose panel in the back of the garage, tucked behind an old set of paint cans. Not even a key box, just a slot in the drywall. I kept a backup key there for emergencies. I hadn't used it in years. No one else knew it existed except Kayla and her ex. You said he was controlling, I told her quietly. Did he ever have access to this place? She didn't answer at first, just stared at the keyhole, her face pale. He dropped me off once, after my birthday last year, she said. I thought he stayed in the car. I ran inside to grab something. It was only like 2 minutes. 2 minutes was more than enough. I pulled down the ladder to the attic that afternoon. I hadn't been up there since spring. Just old boxes, insulation, maybe a few spiders and regrets. But as I climbed up, I felt something different. It wasn't the air, it was the stillness. Like someone had been there recently enough that the dust hadn't had time to settle again. Sure enough, in the far corner, behind a stack of old holiday boxes, was a sleeping bag. Next to it, an empty water bottle, a crumpled wrapper, a folded-up paper. I pulled it out and unfolded it slowly. It was a map of my house, drawn by hand, labeled. There were markings, arrows pointing to weak floorboards, to the side gate that stuck unless lifted at the base. One arrow pointed to the breaker box, another to the guest room window. I didn't say anything for a long time. I just stood there, in my own attic, holding proof that someone had not only broken in, but had planned for it, had studied the layout, had known the weak points of my own damn home better than I did, and had slept above me, silently, while I made coffee and watched TV and wondered why my shoes didn't line up the way I remembered. That night, I sealed the attic. I drove to the hardware store, bought reinforced latches, screwed the door shut myself. I moved the ladder to the shed and locked it. Kayla watched me from the porch, arms crossed, face unreadable. You think he was living up there? She asked. I don't think, I said. I know. We didn't say much after that. There wasn't much left to say, except the same thought echoing in both our heads. What if he's still inside? I didn't think it was possible to feel more violated than I already had, but I was wrong. Real wrong. There's something especially cruel about knowing the person who's been inside your house, eating, sleeping, watching, didn't just stumble in. He planned for it. He studied, knew where the breaker was, knew what parts of the house creaked, knew where Kayla slept, and worse, knew where I kept the damn spare key. I couldn't shake that feeling, like I was walking around naked in my own home, exposed in every way, and someone out there had already memorized my blind spots. I kept the lights on for 2 nights straight, installed motion sensors from the hardware store, nothing fancy, just enough to alert me if something moved where it shouldn't. I put one in the hallway, one facing the front porch, and one outside the back gate. I didn't tell Kayla. No sense in scaring her more than she already was. She'd barely left her room as it was. Every time I passed the guest door, I heard her TV on low, like the noise helped drown out whatever fear was still curling in her gut. The same fear that was now in mine. Around midnight the next night, the hallway sensor went off. Just once. A sharp beep that jolted me awake like a firecracker. I leapt out of the recliner so fast I pulled something in my shoulder, heart hammering, breath stuck halfway down my throat. I didn't see anyone in the hallway, but the motion detector light was blinking red. That only happened if something had passed within 6 feet of it. I stood there for a solid minute, holding a fireplace poker like it was a sword, listening so hard my ears rang. No footsteps, no creaks, just the hum of the fridge and the heavy silence that follows panic. I checked every door again, every window. Nothing. I even opened Kayla's door. She was curled on the bed, headphones in, blanket over her head. Completely unaware. I didn't wake her. Just closed the door and leaned against it for a second. My whole body was tight, like a rubber band pulled to its breaking point. That kind of fear, the slow, creeping kind that doesn't scream but whispers, is harder to shake. It settles into your bones. And I started wondering, what if this wasn't random anymore? What if he wasn't here for her? What if now he was here for me? The next morning, I installed a camera in the hallway. One of those little Wi-Fi ones you can watch from your phone. I positioned it high, angled down the length of the hallway from my bedroom to Kayla's. I didn't tell her about it either. Again, no need for her to spiral. I figured I'd let it run a few nights and check footage if anything seemed off. Honestly, part of me hoped it was a glitch. Maybe a spider crawling across the sensor or a power surge. But when I checked the footage the next morning, the cold in my gut dropped like lead. There was movement. At 3:12 a.m. sharp, the camera clicked on, and there, clear as daylight, was a man standing outside Kayla's door. Not moving, just standing. He wore the same hoodie from the photos, head tilted slightly downward, hands at his sides like he was waiting for something. He didn't knock, didn't try the door, just stood there for 5 full minutes. And then he turned, walked back down the hallway, and disappeared off frame. I watched it 3 times. Each time, the nausea got worse. He wasn't in a hurry. He wasn't scared. He moved like he belonged there. Like this was routine. Like this hallway was his. And that's when I noticed something else. On the wall behind him, just for a moment, you could see the corner of a photo. A photo I hadn't put up. I paused the video. Zoomed. It was me, asleep in my recliner, taken from just a few feet away. I slammed the laptop shut so hard it startled the cat outside. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. Because now, it wasn't about Kayla anymore. It was about me. This man, this shadow we'd been chasing, had been in my living room, just feet away from where I slept. And he'd left proof. Not because he was careless, but because he wanted me to know. Wanted to unsettle me. Let me feel what Kayla had felt. Helpless. Violated. Watched. And it worked. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, every light off, the hallway camera running, the motion sensor armed, and the fireplace poker still beside me. My phone was open on the camera feed, thumb hovering over the emergency call button. But he didn't come back. Not that night. Not the next. It was almost worse than not knowing. Was he done? Or just waiting for the next moment to remind me we weren't alone? I didn't tell Kayla. I couldn't. Because the look in her eyes the last time she saw that photo, her, sleeping, unaware, was enough to keep me from showing her mine. From letting her know that whoever this man was, he wasn't just obsessed. He was evolving. From watcher to invader. From her past to my present. And I had no idea how far he'd go next. After watching that footage, I stopped trying to pretend like things might return to normal. There's no normal after you realize someone has stood in your hallway at night, watching your niece's door, then calmly walked off as if he lived there. No normal when you find a photo of yourself sleeping, left like a calling card. He wasn't breaking in for money or valuables. He wasn't here to rob us. He wanted presence. He wanted us to know that he was here, and worse, that he could come back any time he damn well pleased. The worst part? I believed him. I didn't show Kayla the footage. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But something in her had shifted anyway. She started keeping her shoes by the bed and a backpack by the door. She didn't say it out loud, but I could tell she was thinking escape, thinking what if. We both were. She walked slower, looked behind her more often, started asking if I locked the front door, even when I already had. The energy in the house felt different, like the walls were holding their breath. Nothing dramatic happened for 2 nights. No movement on the cameras. No more motion sensors tripping. And that calm, however fake, was almost enough to make me exhale. Then came night 3. And with it, the envelope. It was on the porch, tucked just inside the storm door, not addressed, not stamped, left by hand. I found it when I stepped out at 7 a.m. to check the newspaper. I almost didn't see it at first. Just a plain white envelope with my name written in thick, block letters across the front. Just Ron. Nothing else. I didn't open it on the porch. I walked back inside, shut the door, locked it twice, then stood at the kitchen table and opened it with the same caution you'd use to cut the red wire on a bomb. Inside were 4 photos, all black and white, all high quality, not taken from a phone, taken from a real camera, one with a lens meant to capture detail. The first was of me, leaving the grocery store. The second, me inside the garage, tinkering with my bike. The third, taken through the living room window, showed Kayla curled on the couch, reading. And the fourth? The fourth was me, from behind, standing in the hallway, looking at the camera I'd installed. Not the hallway camera footage. A photo of me, watching him, watching us. I sat down hard in the kitchen chair. My vision went tight at the edges, like my head was filling with air too fast to breathe. This wasn't surveillance anymore. It was a game. He was showing me that he could not only walk into my house, but also flip the script. Now he was watching me watch him. I was being toyed with in my own damn home. And worse, I was losing. I called the police. Again. This time, I gave them everything. The original photo, the printed screenshots of the man from the party, the footage of him standing outside Kayla's door, and now, the envelope with the 4 new pictures. An officer and a detective came by. They were more serious now. Took their time, walked through the house, asked questions they'd asked before, but with sharper tones. I could tell they were finally starting to believe me. They left with the envelope, promising to follow up. But I saw the way they looked at me when I locked the door behind them. Pity. Not certainty. Not reassurance. Pity. As if they already knew how these stories ended. That night, I moved the camera. I positioned it directly above my recliner, aimed at the living room. I stayed up again, eyes half glued to the screen, checking the hallway feed every 10 minutes. It was like playing chess with a ghost. You couldn't see the moves coming. You could only react to what was already done. Around midnight, Kayla crept into the living room and sat beside me. Her eyes were swollen, hair pulled back like she hadn't bothered trying to look okay anymore. "I think I know who he is," she said. I didn't breathe, just waited. "I don't know his name," she went on, voice flat. "But he was at one of my college events. Like, 3 years ago. I was helping with registration for a campus job fair. He came up to the table 4 different times, asked the same questions. Like he didn't remember me. But I think he did." "You're sure it's the same guy?" "I didn't remember at first. But it's the eyes. He never blinked." I sat back. My stomach felt like it had dropped into my shoes. "Why didn't you say something earlier?" "Because I thought I was crazy. Until I saw the pictures. Until that night in the hallway." She turned her head and finally looked at me. "I don't think he wants to hurt us," she said slowly. "I think he wants us to know he could." That hit harder than anything. Not because it was dramatic, but because it felt true. This wasn't about violence. Not yet. It was about control. Psychological invasion. And he was winning, because we'd done everything except leave. The next night, it escalated again. At exactly 3:12 a.m. The same time as before, I heard footsteps. Not the creak of the house. Not wind. Footsteps. Measured, slow, right above the living room. But the attic was sealed. I'd boarded it. Locked it from the outside. There was no way anyone could be up there unless they were already inside. I didn't move. Didn't grab the poker. Didn't check the camera. I just sat there, eyes wide open, heart thudding so loud I thought it might give me away. The steps went silent after 30 seconds. 30 seconds that felt like a whole year. The next morning, I checked the hallway footage. No one appeared. But on the living room feed, there was a glitch. At 3:12 a.m., the screen went fuzzy for 8 seconds. And when it cleared, the recliner pillow behind my head was turned upside down. I hadn't moved. I hadn't even blinked. But something, or someone, had been behind me. Close enough to touch. I used to believe locks meant something. You hear the click of a deadbolt and think you've done your part. that you've built a boundary strong enough to hold the world back. But locks are just metal and hope, thin layers of control that collapse the moment someone decides not to care about them. That final morning, when I opened the mailbox and saw an envelope resting alone inside, not tucked in like usual, but standing up, waiting for me, I didn't check for stamps. I didn't look around the street. I already knew. He'd been here again. No door had opened. No motion sensor had blinked. No camera had caught him. But somehow, some way, he had come back. Because people like him didn't care about locks. They only cared about being remembered. The envelope didn't have my name on it this time. Just one word, goodbye. Written in all caps, black ink, shaky like it had been done too quickly or by someone laughing while they wrote. I took it inside, peeled it open slowly. My hands weren't shaking. Not this time. Not anymore. I think the part of me that had been afraid was finally exhausted. Inside was a single photo. Glossy, crisp, still black and white. But this time, it wasn't of Kayla. It wasn't even of me. It was of the two of us, sitting on the couch, 2 nights ago, her half asleep on my shoulder, my hand resting on hers. We hadn't taken that photo. And it wasn't from the cameras. It was from behind us. I turned it over. My throat closed. In tiny handwriting, almost like a child's, were 5 words. She was never the one. I dropped the photo onto the table. It made no sound, but it echoed in my chest like a thunderclap. Kayla, who had been standing at the sink pouring coffee, turned when she saw my face. "What is it?" she asked, stepping forward slowly. I didn't answer. I just handed her the photo and stepped back. She looked at it, then at the message, and her entire body seemed to stop breathing. That's from Tuesday," she said. "That's when I fell asleep during that documentary." I nodded. "And your camera doesn't cover that angle," she added. "I know." Neither of us spoke for a long time. Then, very quietly, Kayla whispered, "He was behind us." She said it like it tasted sour. I didn't say it aloud, but the thought that kept cycling in my head was worse. He was never after her. He was after me. Every detail snapped into place then. The escalation, the shift in focus, the photo left in the fridge, the message behind the last envelope. Kayla had just been the excuse, the gateway, the soft target. But I was the one he wanted to break. I was the one he wanted to see unravel. I thought about the years I'd spent alone in this house, the predictable routine, the easy silences. I'd taken pride in how little I needed, how simply I could live. And that was exactly what made me vulnerable. He saw a man with no backup. A man no one checked in on. A man easy to disappear. That was the thought that made me sit down. We didn't talk about staying after that. We both knew. We packed that night. Just 2 bags. Clothes. Documents. My retirement cash. What little was left. Kayla deleted her social media. I shut off the cameras. We left the house before dawn, didn't leave a note, didn't look back. I gave the keys to an old friend, a guy I used to work with at the high school. Told him to keep an eye on the place, but not to go inside. I didn't tell him why. What was the point? It's been 3 weeks since we left. We're staying at a motel near a quiet town with more cornfields than people. Kayla got a job waiting tables. I fix up lawnmowers for extra cash. It's not glamorous. It's not a comeback story. But it's quiet. For now. Every night, I still check the locks. I still sleep with the lights on. But I don't check the cameras anymore. I don't have them. I don't want them. Because I know something now. This wasn't about catching him. It never was. It was about surviving what he left behind. Kayla sleeps better here. She started smiling again. Just a little. Just enough to remind me she's still young. Still healing. Sometimes I catch her watching the door, though. That part doesn't go away. Not entirely. Not when someone has made it their mission to make you feel seen in the worst possible way. As for me, I think about that final photo more than I should. The one where we were sitting together. The one he took from behind. And what chills me most, what still wakes me up some nights, isn't that he got that close. It's that we never heard him, never felt him. And maybe that was the point. He didn't need to touch us. He didn't need to hurt us. He just needed to leave a scar so deep that we'd carry him with us everywhere. And that's exactly what he did. If you've ever trusted the wrong person, or let someone into your life only to realize too late what it cost you, you're not alone. Some scars aren't visible, and some trespasses can't be reported. If this story struck a nerve, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to know that protecting your peace sometimes means leaving everything behind.